Hello everyone and welcome to my channel where we take a look at the different unit mods or new mods for various games. In this video I'm gonna be talking about the Radious mod for Warhammer 3, and the faction I'm gonna cover today is gonna be the Dark Elves or Druki. With this mod there were 20 new units added. Some of them are additions to the already existing units, like different variations of them, and some of them are completely new units that's been implemented into the game with this mod. So if you're planning to start a new campaign as the Dark Elves in the future, you should definitely just stay and see new units are going to be added with this mod. I'm going to be more than happy to show it to you guys and explain what will you get. But before we start, I just need a small favor from you. If you like Warhammer 3 and you like mods for this game, please subscribe for my channel. If you're looking forward to see more videos like that, I'm trying to post them as fast as possible for you guys. I'm doing my best with the full-time work I have and spending my free time making these videos for you guys. I'm really looking forward for monetizing this channel, and you guys can help me. I'm gonna be very thankful for that. So since I passed this message, let's see these new units. Here we are, starting with the melee infantry, and the first two units that we have here called Black Arc Reavers. This variant with spears, poison attacks on their melee attacks, and obviously bonus versus large. This unit is a nice addition beginning to mid-game if you want to deal with the enemy's large units. As all anti-large infantry units, they have charge defense against large entities and charge reflection. And these guys have an interesting ability called Murderous Mastery. I think it's a better version of the Murderous Powers that vanilla game has for the Dark Elves roster. So whenever you reach the certain amount of kills, it's gonna activate for all your units and gonna give them nice bonuses for their fighting capabilities. And with this mod, basically it adds some extra melee attacks, charge bonus, leadership, trigger per second. The difference between Murderous Mastery and Murderous Powers, your units will get the fear ability, which definitely gonna make them more useful and will be much more helpful fighting against enemies, because they can rout your enemies by reducing their leadership when nearby. And their second version with swords, same poison attacks and Murderous Mastery. They don't really have a bonus versus infantry, so I feel like the first version is gonna be more useful than these guys. These guys are just gonna be like a mid shield, have a nice protection against missiles with their silver shields. But honestly, these two units, Black Arc Reavers, are just an upgraded version of the regular spearmen and swordsmen for your Druki army. So they cost a bit more, so if you have money, you can always hire them instead of the vanilla units. And I'm sure that Dark Elves don't really have a problem with economy because of their slavery mechanics. And like all the new units that's been added with this mod, all of them are getting bonuses from the tech tree and skills from the Lord's Red Line. Moving into more feminine units, these are Devotees of Slaanesh. Interesting version from your regular witches. This unit has a shield, even though it looks like a huge shield. It's only considered as a bronze shield that only blocks 35% of all the missiles. They have a nice poison attacks that can definitely be useful against enemies. They have a bonus versus infantry, have a Murderous Powers and Frenzy ability, which will make them more deadly in close combat, and they come with the physical resistance of 20%. I would say that this unit has a really interesting use because of their shields. They're not as deadly as the regular vanilla witches, but they're better protected. I think they're best used as a support unit, just to poison other enemies' infantries and maybe charge your vanilla witches into those enemies so they can work good in pair and do some more damage. Here we got the Pit Fighters. We got the two versions. First one has great axes and their armor piercing, decent tier 2 unit, They come with immune to psychology and murderous mastery. Like I said previously, I feel like murderous mastery is more useful than murderous powers, just because they get a nice bonus to cause fear. Also, they got the frenzy ability, which makes them even more powerful in melee. They got a nice physical resistance of 10% and a nice missile resistance of 10% as well. Overall, it's not a bad unit for tier 2. Definitely, they can deal well against armored infantry. For example, if you're dealing with any kind of chosen units, for example, if you're fighting any demon factions and they have lots of armor, these guys can be used good against them, but keep in mind, these are the Great Axe infantry. They don't have shields, not a lot of armor, so be careful of the enemy's missiles. If you're facing the army that has lots of missile units, here's the Pit Veterans, the shielded version of this unit, who has bronze shields, not the best ones, because of the 35% block chance, but still better than nothing. They have a bonus versus infantry, have perfect vigor, immune to psychology, and murderous mastery. Also has a frenzy ability, and they also come with the death blow, which works perfectly with their frenzy ability and immune to psychology, because these units are less likely to rout, and death blow only activates if this unit has less than 20% of HP. So it's a nice balance addition between passive abilities. They come with 20% of physical resistance and 10% of missile resistance. More physical resistance than their previous version, plus shields. Both of these units are decent tier 2 units, so I guess you just choose them, depends on the enemies you're facing. And yeah, like all the units here, I'm gonna repeat myself, they can be buffed by tech 3 or skills. Here we have another two variants of the new units. This one's called Shadows, and this one are with Spears. That's your anti-large version. They have a Madness of Cain ability for their melee attacks, which reduces the enemy's speed and melee defense, and also makes the enemy's units go into rampage. They have a Smoke Bomb ability, which also reduces the enemy's charge speed and regular speed, charge defense against large, Vanguard deployment, Strider ability, charge reflection, and murderous mastery. Still tier 2 unit, which is amazing at killing large entities, especially the enemy's cavalry units, because of their Madness of Cain ability for the melee attacks and their smoke bomb. Once they're gonna be engaged with enemy's cavalry, I don't think the cavalry is gonna escape them. First, because they reduce big amount of speed of the enemy's units, and second, they can make them rampage, so the cavalry is not gonna go anywhere. Very useful unit. I'm sure you guys will find use of it. Just be careful to watch for the enemy missiles, because these guys doesn't have a lot of armor and they don't carry any shields. And for the occasion, if you're facing lots of enemies infantry units, the Shadows with Swords, that's your anti-infantry version. This one's carry a shield. They also got the Madness of Cain ability, smoke bombs, murderous mastery, and a strider, also Vanguard deployment. I feel like these guys are gonna be less useful than the first version, just because once the melee infantry is engaged, they don't really go anywhere far. So if even though you're gonna send the enemy units into rampage, that's where your enemies want to be, especially if they're fighting in melee. Still nice ability, I think, Madness of Cain, taking away control of the enemy's units from your enemies to force some madness into enemies' ranks. I feel like the first version is much more useful just because of the way they can deal with the cavalries, but I'm sure these guys can be useful as well. And going to melee infantry tier higher, Brides of Burning Blood. Your spear infantry, good against large entities, have flaming attacks, magical attacks, Madness of Cain ability. It's definitely an upgraded version from the Shadows. Their immune psychology has murderous mastery, frenzy, missile resistance of 25%, fire resistance of 25% as well, and they cause fear. These units are very useful. They don't really get scared from the enemy's missiles, but make sure to check if the enemy's missiles has lots of armor piercing damage, because it will affect them. But if you're facing like the regular crossbowmen or archers, these guys can perform well, even like under the fires of the enemy's missiles. So I think it's a very useful unit. They're quick, they have a decent speed of 44, which can be upgraded if we have any tags that upgrades their speed, or Lord's skill line that upgrades their speed. Like I said, Madness of Cain ability on their melee attacks will make the enemy's large units basically useless. Be sure to use them. And for those who love to use the Harganeth Executioners, here's another version with shields. A version to hold your lines, very nice. They have silver shields, tons of armor, bonus versus infantry, immune to psychology, and has murderous mastery. This is the version to use, for example, if you're fighting against the faction that uses lots of missiles. Even though with shields, these guys can still wreck some kills with one-handed swords, so you got some more versatile army to use for any occasions you need to. Black Guards of Nagaround, this one with spears, another anti-large version. These ones are more protected, they got silver shields. The vanilla Black Guards of Nagaround, the one with the halberds, they didn't have the Thunder Armor ability, so this guy has it. They reduce the enemy's armor. Thunder Armor is very useful as a supportive ability. For example, if you're using your melee and missile infantry together, this guy is going to reduce the enemy's armor, and your Dark Shards or whoever you're using, they can deal more damage towards the enemies because of less armor. So definitely a nice supporting unit to hold the front lines. They have a murderous mastery, also causes fear, and immune psychology. The only problem, they don't have the charge reflection, but they still have a charge defense versus large, so they're not going to be moved by large entities. Here we got the completely new units called Fellblades. This one's with dual wield. We have another version I'm going to show you next. They have a Thunder Armor ability as well, bonus versus infantry, immune to psychology, murderous mastery, frenzy ability, and missile resistance of 15%. These guys already got nice armor, plus the missile resistance makes enemy missiles just to tickle them, unless it's armor piercing. So just watch out for armor piercing, and their Thunder Armor ability just makes them more as a support unit to reduce the enemy's armor. For example, if you're using them with pair with your missile infantry, just to do more damage. And their second version with great swords. These guys are much better than Harganeth Executioners. They have better stats in everything. Good armor, armor piercing damage, bonus versus infantry, immune to psychology, murderous mastery, frenzy ability, and missile resistance of 15%. That's your damage dealer infantry. It can deal the most damage out of all your units, so definitely use them whenever you can. You can replace your Harganeth Executioners with these guys, Fellblades, whenever it's possible to. They cost a bit more, but they bring to the table much more stuff. And they got the same benefits from attack 3 that buffs the Harganeth Executioners and also the Lord's skill line. So definitely a better version of the infantry killer. And the last two units for the melee infantry, the Endless, and this version with halberds. Very powerful units. They got magical attacks and blinded ability that reduces the enemy's melee defense, melee attack, and accuracy. Armor piercing halberds, bonus versus large. They encourage other units, increases your army's leadership, murderous mastery, and a spell resistance of 20%. If you download this mod, that's going to be your top infantry unit to deal with the enemy's large entities. Plus their magical attacks can do well against demons, and they have armor piercing ability, so well armored large entities are nothing for these guys. And the Endless with swords. This is the very nice unit with monstrous stats. Has lots of armor, silver shields, magical attacks, blinded ability, encourages other units, murderous mastery, spell resistance of 20%. Definitely can hold on its own. They're kinda expensive, but like I said, The rookie shouldn't have a problem with economy, especially at the end game. So definitely have at least few of them in your army just for the encourage ability and for their very nice stats for Dark Elves. And going to the missile infantry, we got the Cult of the Blood Queen. Beautiful looking units. Tier 3. For their melee attack they got thunder armor, same thing with their missile attacks. It's armor piercing plus thunder armor. These guys don't even care about the enemy's armor. Definitely a good way just to keep up with your crossbow units who are also well against armor. They have Vanguard deployment, Strider ability, murderous powers, physical resistance of 10%, and the missile resistance of 10% as well. Decent melee stats, just in case you need to send them into melee or somebody corrupt them. But like I said, very beautiful looking unit, as you guys can see, even though using bows don't really care about enemy's armor. Next on the list we have Daughters of Despair. Another great unit with nice armor, nice melee stats, and good range stats. They use poison, both for their melee and range attacks. A very useful ability, if you want to ask me. They are immune to psychology, got murderous powers, and the spell resistance of 25%. Nice useful unit for the end game. It's much easier to deal with the poisoned enemies. And the best archers that you can get with this mod, called the Rookie City Guards. The most expensive missile unit that you can get with this mod. They use shields to protect themselves against the other enemies' missiles. They got thunder armor just for their melee attacks, not for their missiles. Their missiles are armor piercing, can have a bonus versus large, so they're better used against the armored large entities, maybe large monsters or cavalry. They're expert at charge defense and have murderous powers. So with all these abilities, we can say that these guys are well equipped to deal with large entities like cavalry charge, because their expert charge defense just protects them from any charges from the enemies, and they have a nice bonus versus large units just for their missile attacks. This guy look like they're just taunting the enemy's cavalry units, just charging them just to bait them into a trap. Very nice unit in my opinion. Definitely you should have at least few of them in your army just to kill large entities. And we're almost there, going to cavalry units. We got only two. These ones are Dark Riders with swords. In vanilla version we got two other variants of Dark Riders with crossbows as a missile cavalry and shock cavalry. These ones are the regular sword cavalry, just with a better stats in melee. They have bonus versus infantry, they have vanguard deployment and murderous powers, but don't expect them to do well against same tier infantry units. These guys are used fast to deal with enemy's missile units or the artillery pieces, but if you really need to, you can all obviously charge them. They have a decent charge bonus, but because it's a tier 2 cavalry unit, and we know in this game cavalry is not really good against enemy's infantry unit, like going head to head, so just be careful with these guys. And for the last cavalry, we got Helldrakes. This is the Cold One cavalry. 60 entities, not 48, which is really useful. They got nice speed, lots of armor, silver shields, as a flaming attacks, which are better used against regenerating enemies or undead. Nice bonus versus infantry, a good charge bonus. They encourage your friendly units, got the murderous mastery. Them themselves has a nice fire resistance of 40% and they cause fear. I feel like it's a better version of the cold ones that you get from the vanilla game. They have a better stats overall. The only thing they're missing is the primal ability that's been buffed in the turtle game, but I feel like these guys can do well without this primal ability too. Definitely the units of the cold ones that you would want to use in your next gameplay as a rookie. And for the last unit, we got the Monster Royal Hydra, an upgraded version from the regular Hydra unit. This one comes with the magical attacks and poison as the vanilla Hydra. It has armor piercing damage and bonus versus infantry. Has the same abilities: fire breath, perfect vigor, regeneration, missile resistance of 50%, spell resistance of 25%, and it costs both terror and fear. Costs a bit more than a regular Hydra, but it brings to the table a better stats, plus with some nice passive abilities that's going to be useful. Its magical attacks and poison ability makes it even deadlier in the matchups against another large entities that this Hydra is going to face. And that, my friends, was everything for the Dark Elves roster. Hopefully you guys enjoyed these units and find them interesting. I'm looking forward to using them in your next campaign as Dark Elves. I definitely like playing as Dark Elves, one of my favorite factions, and it feels good just to have these new army compositions that you can make and cool looking units. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, please leave your like, and if you haven't subscribed for this channel yet, please do. It's really nice to see the community grow. I'm trying to improve my videos every time I make them, and like I said, want to make this channel monetize. With your help, I will be able to do this, and so we can expand this nice modding community. If you have any questions, just leave the comments underneath this video, and just let me know which faction do you want to see next. I have suggestions on my channel. It's either Vampire Coast or Tom Kings. Let me know who you want to see next. I would love to make another video covering these factions. And it was Mod Addict with you guys, and hope you have a nice day.